All right, I think we're just going to start the webinar. Again, welcome everyone to this webinar of HVFC International. For some of you that don't know us yet, we are a small boutique consultancy firm advising in fundraising. And as services to our community, we regularly host webinars where we highlight different aspects of fundraising and mainly institutional fundraising. So today, we are very happy to have with us Yue Cui, who is the director of the Signify Foundation. She will be joining us and talk about a shift that the Signify Foundation recently made from grant making to working in partnerships. But before we dive into all these details, I will just give Yue the opportunity to briefly introduce herself.
Yes. And then thank you, Kenneth, for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Super. Hey, hi everybody. My name's Yue. I'm the director of Signify Foundation, as Kenneth mentioned. I manage a lot of things at the foundation, programs, partnerships. Yeah, and we have a small team, core team, but with a really large network of support from Signify. But that's also just my day job. My other job is being a mom of two young kids, and then some of you may relate what that job looks like. But my intention today is to open doors to share about my day job at Signify Foundation. Yeah, sharing with you who we are, what we do, yeah, and how we make funding decisions mainly, and
Yeah,
hopefully also that helps you to get more insights, have more fruitful thoughts, and perhaps also collaboration opportunities with us.
great. Well, let's start then, Yue. Thank you for introducing yourself. And let's start by maybe you telling us a little bit more about the foundation, how it works. And as you are talking, I'm just going to also share some slides.
Yeah. So Signify Foundation, you see the first picture, lights, right? So we were set up 8 years ago, and when Signify as a company spun off from Philips. And by the way, Philips Foundation is still there, focusing on access to healthcare. That'll be also good to reach out. But Signify Foundation since then was established. And the reason for Signify to set up its own foundation was that, at that time, the board of management had very strong belief that lighting plays a key role in development and also humanitarian aid. Yeah, then if you go to the next slide, Kenneth. Yeah, so who I focus on, especially for the near 1 billion people who don't currently have electricity access. Yeah, those are our target groups, the population that we aim to serve. And if you go to the next slide. Yeah, here you see a map that illustrates the geographic focus of the foundation. And not surprisingly, right, we follow the needs. So the majority of our projects are sub-Saharan Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America. And we are very proud to share that by the end of last year, that we achieved the so-called milestones, right? That the corporate 10 million people reached, and we aim to do more. So the next slides give you more technical details. What we focus on at the foundation, we focus on providing lighting to communities and essential services. And you see the three pillars on the slides. Yeah, schools, health facilities, and also markets, public spaces, right, for refugee settlements, for rural villages, for informal settlements, what have you. So all these programs come together, and some are intertwined as well, right? We don't just very rigidly categorize, but then there's at least umbrella to talk when we talk about or think about our projects. So these key elements, learning, education, health, we believe are key drivers for development as well. But here we also want to make clear that we don't make lighting donations for households, to avoid potential market distortion. And that's a key learning we had over the past years. Here we are very much aware that lighting as a technology in itself cannot drive change. It's the people who use it to make something out of it that will like drive change for themselves. And that's why we always work in partnerships, yeah, to make sure there's proper ownership of the technology, there's transfer of knowledge and sustained impact. But then we usually get this question, what kind of organization is Signify Foundation? Are we a corporate? Are we an NGO? Who are you? Right? It's a strange animal if you think about the concept of private sector or corporate foundations, yeah, at this stage. So technically, we are registered as a Dutch MB-stichting nonprofit that are different, yeah, from corporate. So we are legally separated from Signify. We have a board with majority members external to Signify, and the funding decisions, all the funding decisions and strategic directions are independently made by this board. And so if you look at my personal KPI, I don't carry any corporate goals. But the truth is, we carry corporate personality. And what do I mean by that, right? Well, simply by carrying Signify in the name of the foundation, our actions have direct impacts on the brand equity building of Signify, right? And also the stakeholder perceptions. I'm very, very much aware of that, right? But then second, importantly, we're also very much influenced by the corporate thinking. And that's more in line with what I'm trying to say. I'm probably going to repeat in this interview the corporate personality, right? It's always making decisions not only from the principles of the heart, but also from the principles of the brain, of the mind, yeah, which are offering differentiated services, products, and also always think about using comparative advantages. But Kenneth, that's my answer to your first question, what we do and who we are.
Thank you so much, Yue. Um, before we continue, I just wanted to tell the audience and mention to the audience that we have a Q&A session just 30 minutes into the session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. We will monitor them. And after we are done with the interview, we will also address any questions that you may have for UA. So feel free again to post them in the chat as we go along. So it was that was very interesting. Also, you said, you have a corporate personality. You were talking about the corporate thinking. At the same time, you're an independent foundation, but you also want to avoid market distortion. So it seems that you have quite a lot of things to balance. Can you maybe also illustrate that with a concrete example? Like how does that then work out in the projects that you or the programs that you select for funding?
Yeah. Well, so what I mentioned was basically very much described in our funding criteria, right? It's public available. We publish on the website what type of projects that we fund and which are excluded from our scope. Right? So that comes first. We select projects based on what makes sense the most for communities. Then I'll also later talk about also the partnership selection and formation, right? And all the rest about corporate connection, for example, brand equity building, and those are more for internal considerations, yeah, than thinking about communication about the projects, right? Make internal employees aware of the projects. So those are different layers. We want to make it very clear for external parties. We have a clearly defined criteria for projects, right? And then the rest are more for operationally carried out to balance also the corporate interest.
Mhm. And can you name a specific project where, what maybe highlight one project that you have been working on and that you have supported, and
Yeah,
what was Signify's role other than
yeah. Yeah,
providing
happy to.
the financial support.
Yeah. We actually delete the slide right at the very beginning. So we have I usually like to mention one of the smallest projects that we ever had. Yeah, 2 years ago we partnered with the University of Johannesburg. Yeah, together to provide lighting, but also access to internet. Yeah, textbooks and calculators, computers. Yeah, to Limpopo, there's a secondary school. And there we work in collaboration, right? Johannesburg University, they have their outreach program, and our colleagues in South Africa supported with lighting design, offering, and delivery. And last year we got really amazing results. The passing rate of the students, yeah, used to be 57%. Yeah,
Mhm.
and after a year of the project, now you see the students can come back to school to study, and they can do all kind of learning activities as well. And now it's 92%. Yeah, you see really within a limited time, there's a lot of improvement, but also, yeah, our colleagues in Signify, they provided a lot of support technically and to also make sure that, yeah, later on there's a service to be provided.
Ah, okay, so there is on the one hand there is the grant making, but there is also from the corporate entity Signify, there is a lot of technical support or technical
Correct.
services, if you like. Can you name some examples of those technical services
Yeah,
or
yeah,
support?
yeah, in project, for example, just messaging someone before the webinar that we are looking at the lighting needs for several technical schools in Mozambique, in Zambia from our partners. And then there, our colleagues from Signify South Africa have to also leverage their partnership and network to do the site visit, to really technically looking at the lighting needs, what makes most sense for them, right? And then they do all the backend the offering, delivering, the installation guidance, for example, if it requires. And later on, if requires, we also have them visiting the sites to monitor.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. At the very beginning, I said I manage a small core team, but a big network of support from Signify.
Yeah, yeah. And just going back a little bit to the, avoiding market distortion, you already mentioned that is the reason why you don't do household projects or providing lighting to households. But what type of, where would you provide lighting? Like what kind of
Yeah.
institutes or
Yeah,
uh,
anything that is beyond households, right? Households, we understood the consumer market is growing, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs trying to make a living by selling to the households, right? We don't feel justified for us to donate for free. And many of us, I think, in this sector understand also, the negative impact that might cause. But then what we focus on is more on the public spaces, schools and hospitals, as mentioned, where there's very limited funding and there is currently no markets, to be found.
okay, thank you. Now you've recently, and which is also the topic of this webinar, Signify Foundation recently went through a strategic shift from purely grant making to partnerships. Could you tell us a bit more about what that shift entails and how that shift came about?
Yeah. To be fair, we were never a grant making organization or so-called corporate giving.
Mhm.
Right? All the projects were done in partnerships, as mentioned. But the difference is that, we used to fund the entire projects end to end. You have to think about typical component of a project. You have feasibility studies and stakeholder engagement, execution, follow-up, many components, right? Then we were typically a buyer of a funder of all the components. So I like to use the analogy if you think about a marketplace for projects, we were a typical buyer, right? And now we're switching gears to also join the marketplace to be a seller. Yeah, selling lights but free of charge, so to say. Yeah. Um, but even better, we want to and are working with partners to co-create projects, interventions that are enhanced by lighting, by access to light or access to better quality light.
Mhm.
And jointly, we bring those projects to the marketplace, to attract potential buyers. I'm not sure if I'm making them more clear or more abstract, but the
So
essence is,
maybe you could explain a little bit more about the
yeah,
switching gears, like selling light. You mentioned, but at the same time co-creating projects. Maybe you could clarify that
yeah, yeah.
a bit more.
Yeah, I really got the inspiration last weekend when I tried to get rid of a plant at home, and I put it on the marketplace and I said I offer it for free, right? And then people decide they see a need and they come to take it, right? And they make something nice of it. So that's the same analogy. We're not selling the lights, we're offering for free, but we're looking for partnerships of people who can make good use of it and also take the effort, to pick up the plant in my case, but do something good with the light. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I want to explain why we switched. And it all ties back to what I mentioned earlier, about the corporate personality or corporate way of thinking. Yeah, looking at differentiated services and thinking about the comparative advantage. So first, as Signify Foundation, we're also limited by funding. We're not a deep-pocketed foundation with hundreds of millions to spend, and their money is not our advantage. And that's the honest truth, right? But what we have is abundant access to lighting systems from the company, technical support, but also leveraging on Signify as a global brand, right? The good reputation to open doors for us with a lot of decision makers, funders that we should increasingly use more of. So not focusing on what we are not making a difference, which is limited funding, but look at where else we can leverage. Right. And then, the second is that I think, Kenneth, we mentioned earlier in our first call that we are in the same economic ecosystem like everybody else. So when you see international funding cuts, that has impacts on many organizations, but also this, coinciding with economic situations globally, right? So our current funding comes from Signify corporate only, and we also need to diversify. We also need to make sure that we start looking outside and to collaborate with our partners and creating projects that attracts external funding.
Yeah. So does that then mean what you're saying, like you have a limited budget? Could you maybe indicate what is the range or your annual budget approximately?
Yeah, so currently we have 1 million cash donation from Signify. And on top of that, there's the in-kind donations, right? People resource, and then sometimes also the lighting systems for free.
Mhm. Yeah. And you said also you also need to diversify because while you have the corporate donation, that of course is dependent on how the corporation does. So does that mean that you, from year on year, your budget may differ?
Yeah, hopefully, that's the stability. That's something that we always stress with the corporate, and think Signify understands that and supports that.
Mhm.
However, just by thinking we're in this economic uncertainty, right? And that also triggers the foundation, the board, the team to think independently, say, how can we, further just make sure that we have also alternative source of funding?
Yeah. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about your thinking around creating alternative sources of funding as a foundation that has its own funds? So not a grant seeker, but still for a big part a grant maker.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so we always do in partnerships, right? So there, how we define partnerships, I think that's a valid question as well, right? The key is for us to have equality in partnership, also joint goal and shared efforts. So no typical donor donee mindset, and then we can really work together. So I think that's the fundamental for us before looking further for joint opportunities, because it has to be set on a solid foundation of partnership and good projects, right? And yeah, this is informed by our evaluation over the past projects. We look at the projects that really sustained, that really made a difference in people's lives, and we ask ourselves what went well for the partnership formation or the project formation. And not surprisingly, all of these projects started with honest conversations between the two parties or more, but for us, mainly two organizations working together. Yeah, we talk about each other's strengths, what you're good in, what you're good at, what are we good at, and blind spots. Yeah, places where no one has capacity or competency, then we need to really stress that, right? So storytelling is important, and I think that's the yeah, the key go-to strategy, right, for NGOs. When you pitch funding, there's always good stories. It's important, but we really need to get to the bottom of, does our collaboration make sense? Yeah, for example, some of the projects or partners are really deeply connected with communities and very much respected and trusted, but they don't necessarily understand lighting as technology. They don't necessarily have any experience with distribution, installation. Great, it's not a problem, right? Let's come to that point earlier, have that honest conversation, and see how we can fill in the gap, right? And second is that all these partnerships focus on the work first and funding next.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be first understood what needs to be done, how we can do it, and then second, to see how we can fund it. And that part we're increasingly doing with our partners jointly. Yeah, looking at different avenues, yeah, resources, and to think about how do we do this together to jointly get funding.
Right. So is it then correct to say that Signify Foundation would act more as a co-financing partner, which may help also the partners that you work with to raise additional funds for the project or the program that they're designing with you?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the co-creation, because you did explain very well how you work with partners, and I think to summarize that co-creation is I think key in that. Um, how does such a process what does that process look like from, let's say, I mean, do you select the partners at the beginning, or can potential partners
Yeah.
apply?
Yeah. Both. We do have already existing of network of global partners and local ones, and we tend to go back. Yeah, because it makes sense when you stay with a partner, because then learning can convert into experience that can inform the future projects. But we always welcome new discussions, new collaborations, and that's on an ongoing basis. Yeah, anytime, even after this webinar, if someone reach out, say, hey, can we have a discussion? All ears, right? And that co-creation, that's a word that we use, right? But it starts with a discussion. It starts with, if yeah, I express myself clearly at what the focus of the foundation is, enabling access to light, using light to enhance better learning, better health, better livelihood opportunities for communities. Yeah, but starting from there, and you see, well, if your organization looking at education, right? Of course, there's a nexus for us, the sweet spot for us to collaborate on. Or health, the same thing. Refugee settlements, the same thing. Or rural development, right? We just need to find that connection. And that starts with honest conversation without assumptions, right? And then you just, find out what you can do together.
Is this typically also an approach that is very much from the from your corporate identity? Um,
Maybe, or might not. I think the openness comes from still the principles of the heart, right? We identify as NGO. We should also work as in not rigid but open-minded, and always welcome collaboration opportunities, discussion, exchange. Yeah, and that's from that. But I think the corporate thinking comes from after the initial discussions that has to result in decisions fail fast and try fast. Then have that discussions. Can we continue? What can we do together? And can we do more? Because a lot of projects over the past, we feel that also we follow the standard process of feasibility study, pilot, but it doesn't come back. I think the connection is important. I always say my best projects are with partners who were connected on WhatsApp, who can have always a short call distance away, troubleshoot together if something happens. And then I don't need to read just very complete reports confirming what we thought would happen, right? I'm the happiest when we see something out of our assumptions that were not expected, because that's just real learning. And that would just benefit everybody in the next project.
Mhm. Can you maybe, is there a project here? You said you just said the best projects or your best projects are the ones that you deal with a lot on WhatsApp. Can you maybe highlight one example of a project that you think really reflects the way you work in partnership, and then maybe also illustrate a bit like how did that project come about from start to what it is now, or maybe if it's
Oh,
already ended.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I have so many. But I don't know if Sophia from UNICEF is here today. Um,
From?
UNHCR, UN Refugee Agency.
Don't know.
Yeah, but yeah, that's really it breaks my stereotype, for lack of better words, for working with bigger organizations. Because there, we started with honest conversations, right? What does the refugee communities need at this moment? How important is lighting is at the current, because you have different scenarios for emergencies and for permanent settlements. They all come from different angles, right? Assessing the needs. I really enjoy having those conversations, and also honest mapping out what is UNICEF good at, what can they commit, what not. And with the partnership manager, we also look at other potential partners that may help us build projects together, bringing lives for the refugees. And we are on WhatsApp, of course, and every time something happens, we can pick up the phone and call each other, but it's always easier that way.
Do you sometimes maybe encounter that, hey, you mentioned honest conversations, um, but is it maybe sometimes, or could it be challenging to have an honest conversation if,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, an organization also relies on you as a funder to support the project?
But here, the two things. One is that first, project needs to make sense before funding becomes available, right? I think it's something we working in this sector should all be honest about. Force matches also don't work sustainably. We can probably create the projects at the beginning, but if it doesn't last, you can also argue are we wasting money,
Mhm.
right? So I wouldn't say a rejection or not working together is necessarily a bad thing, but honesty should come first. But I mean, not saying that storytelling or different type of approach is not effective. Maybe it works for a lot of organizations, right? If the goal is to raise awareness, if it's not there yet. Yeah, to open doors, to trigger further thoughts, that's all important. But then just to clarify what I meant, honest conversation is really about the core competencies and resource assessment. Yeah, coming to they say the science part after the art.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so can you tell us a little bit about or can you explain to us, you said it's on your website, organizations can actually apply for a partnership.
Yeah.
Um, but we talked a lot about honesty, but if you look at the type of work that you do, what are the types of partnerships that you look for? What type of organizations?
Yeah, that's fair. Um, Either it's global organizations covering several geographies or locally driven organizations, big or small. We don't have criteria on the organizational size,
Mm.
but we do look at their um, connection with the community, whether there's a strong link and a direct reach to communities, right? And then bottom up approach. Um, yeah, I wonder if there is something more that you want me to look at that these yeah, mostly thinking about the partnerships, it's a lot of times, honestly, also from the connections, right? We go to events, you meet people, then you start conversations. Or many times I also get LinkedIn messages, yeah,
Mhm.
for people to say, oh, I'm looking for all the corporates in the Netherlands, looking at which ones have their foundations. I found you. Fair enough, right? That's a very strategic move. Can we start talking? And there we talk. And also a few years ago, we tried open call for proposals. Yeah, to increase the chances to also look at people that we usually wouldn't meet or know us.
Mhm.
That also works well. So we have different channels to reach out for the partners. But eventually, yeah, that's the funnel that you create, and the core assessments stay the same, how I just mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. So you really tend to look at partners or create partners in different ways. Call for applications. It could also be through networking or through social media, such as LinkedIn, that you get in touch. So it seems like you have a fairly open process by which people or organizations can get in touch with the Signify Foundation to see if there might be a potential for partnership.
Yeah, correct. And we don't have the so-called funding rounds. In a year, anytime we can talk about projects, propose projects. So we have quarterly board meetings to approve these projects, but smaller projects can be approved by myself. Yeah, next year we're thinking of making probably more lean way of working, by having two funding rounds instead of yeah, uh, funding decision rounds, but that's not confirmed yet.
Okay, and you said smaller projects that you can decide on yourself. What do you consider a small project?
Oh yeah, the funding less than 50,000.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Now you also mentioned the importance of storytelling, right? So what makes a good story? Maybe you can also give a concrete example of a story that really uh, made an impression on you when you were
Yeah,
working with partners.
yeah. Well, for me, that's personal as well, right? I like to see stories that confront my earlier assumptions about how communities actually work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like to hear stories that focus on the outcomes, yeah, and not immediate outcomes, but after years, long-term impact, and balance with positive, negative, what has been learned as intended consequences, unintended. But that's really from my desire to learn, from these projects. But for if the audience is about the mass or majority, right? And those are the projects that we tell the stories about human impact, that what people actually benefited from having access to light. Yeah, those are really just from our side. And I think most of the organizations are doing really well in telling their own story, yeah, and then showcasing the successful projects.
Hmm.
Yeah, but my personal take is that I would be happy also to hear their experience and learnings, what didn't go well and what are they doing differently.
Is that difficult sometimes or easy? I mean, do you find partners are easy to share what, especially what didn't go so well?
With quite some partners, it's easy, especially if you have the security in the room, right? The mental security that we know we're here not to judge and we're here to form a equal partnership rather than that transactional relationship. I think
Mhm.
is in the benefit of both organizations, and I will also open up by sharing what we learned and what are the things that we don't have or we are not good at.
Yeah. My last question before we move on to the Q&A. I see there is some very nice questions trickling in the
Yes.
chat. Um, but you were also talking about, raising funds in partnership. And we also spoke about some emerging new funding trends and sources that you also see. Would you want to share some of those insights with us? What do you see as emerging
Really,
funding trends or sources?
yeah. Well, to start with, the most eye-opening opportunity I learned recently, I'm still learning from it, is the funding from Bitcoin community.
Hmm.
Yeah. We were invited to a UNDP-led um, workshop. And this organization, you can all Google it, it's called Blockchain for Impact. Yeah, talked about what they do and also giving practical tips, yeah, how to appeal to this very specific community. It's a lot of fun. And then there you can check on their website. They talk about the very successful fundraising initiative during COVID from India that their co-founder, really dropped a message in this community and raised over years $200 million. And that's massive. So yeah, to say, well, funding's out there. And then this is actually, I can't talk on behalf of them. I think it's something that everybody should just check and then connect. And the second is from the Dutch government funding, the RVO.
Mhm.
And increasingly, the government is focusing on promoting trade, yeah, of Dutch business in the emerging markets. So with that, we're also starting to work more closely with Signify and our partners, yeah, to create demonstration and capacity building projects. Yeah,
Okay, but then specifically linked to, in this case, enhancing Dutch trade in some of the countries where you work, and
yeah,
also for the Netherlands trade position.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're starting to try because that's where the funding comes from. And sometimes it really, it's about narrating the storyline, right? The business case in a way that speaks to the program. But still, the most impressive mechanism I saw, um, was this grassroots intervention in South Africa. So there we work with very small organizations, but they both set up food retail businesses, for informal settlements and villages. But then what's interesting is that they give shares, to the community members, and then with any profit they generate through this mini supermarket, the communities come together to decide what and where to invest this money for their own development. So mostly in infrastructure, water, public lighting, and whatnot, right? And that's, it isn't something that we all hope for, that development come from within and for themselves and decided by themselves. yeah, that's really great to pivot consumption to development. And the same as what probably you heard, the diaspora money. And every year there's around,
Mm.
I think 90 billion. I have to look at my source again, but significant amount of money is remitted, yeah, from diasporas transferring to their back to their home communities, but it's mainly used for consumption. And I see now there's some initiatives, NGOs also looking at this domain. How can we connect with the diasporas, with their home communities, and to pivot consumption into development? The same logic.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Yue. I think we're going to now move on to the question and answer session. And my colleague Han has kept track of the questions. So, Han, over to you to see where to address the questions of the audience.
Great. Yes, I saw some great questions coming in, and feel free to leave more questions that we can discuss at a later stage. I've clustered them a bit. You mentioned a lot about partnerships, and so we had quite a lot of questions about partnership. And one was about partnering in the humanitarian situation. Do you ever work in a humanitarian setting as well? And
Yeah.
how does that work? Is it any different than in the development sector?
Yeah, there are humanitarians. Yeah, we have two main part of work streams. One is on immediate disaster relief for natural disasters mainly, and but bigger chunk is for public lighting provision for refugee settlements. Yeah, that's the UNHCR program that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so partnership with that is usually based on expertise, right? The connection and reach to the communities, affected communities, and also depends on, let's say, our capacity to provide immediate relief. So we always look at, is it feasible for us? If we don't have, for example, any presence or access in a certain country, and we won't be able to provide sufficient or timely relief, right? So usually that's the logical step that we take. But then partnerships is really about looking at, can we then look at preparedness of disasters? So stock up lighting equipment for rescue centers, for places where they can be quickly issued to the local communities.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And in that context, are there any specific lessons that you learned that are maybe also
We just
useful
need
for
to
us?
be very, we need to be practical where we can really support, where not. And also our partners honestly share with us, right? Lighting is not the top two or even making the top 10 urgent list in many contexts, right? Food and shelter and a lot of things come before that. So we also, learning from those, need to see where it makes logical sense for us to enter, perhaps more on the rebuilding phase, where things are settling, and then you need infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thanks. Somehow related to the partnerships you mentioned about the new role and how you influence other grant makers and that triggered, I think, the question like, okay, so you're active in that field of philanthropy, you know many people, you have access to those people. Can you also help organizations to find their way in getting access to the right donors?
Yeah. I'm doing that a lot on LinkedIn, for example.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah. So what's the best approach?
Yeah.
People can just reach out to you, or how do you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's the best. Always have a database, right? And then the organizations who expressed interest to collaborate, and then some of the projects that we still need co-funding. And whenever I see opportunities, that's always the easy way to reach out and to discuss.
Yeah. All right. That's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to say the work that you do, making those funding opportunities visible in a very summarized fashion really helps.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. That's yeah. Yeah. And then there was a question on more on culture of partnerships. And I found it a funny question because I know where the question comes from, but Signify comes from the Brainport region, so Eindhoven, Philips region. Is there a connection between partnerships and the culture of the Brainport region, or can this work everywhere?
Yeah, everywhere. You can say I'm not Dutch. I'm Dutch by passport. Dutch. I think that was also the decision that the corporate made, to have more of an international outlook.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
A funny question.
Yeah, from someone from the region probably, but yeah, yeah. And of course, the origin of the foundation and the connection with the company also, of course, inspires people to think. And although there is only a funding relationship, and you explained it very well between Signify and the Signify Foundation, what you do has an effect on the brand of the company as well. So, is there on that side, on the company side, any measurement of how you are doing and how you contribute to the brand?
No. So there, to be clear, what I meant is that really from our side, what we do has the consequences to
Yeah,
the brand equity building, but not the other way around. There's a request for the foundation to do things in order to look good, right? This company and everybody at the foundation, very much aware we need to do good
yeah,
before even looking good. Yeah, so that's not the reverse by saying the corporate give us the KPI. That's why I want to be transparent as well. None of my personal KPI or the team KPI carries corporate goals. I think that's to ensure integrity as well.
yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, yeah. And personally, I was wondering, like the shareholders, how do they feel about the Signify Foundation? Are they proud of it? Do they?
Proud. Yeah, must
Yeah.
be.
And how do you notice that in your work?
Well, that's I think our work is presented to shareholders.
Okay.
I don't have personal link with with them, of course, but it must be something. All the employees are very proud of the foundation and very supportive as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So a relatively good investment from the company as well to set up this foundation, right? It's a lot of money, but relatively, if you get happy shareholders and happy employees, it's a good investment, and you have all that impact as well. So it's
We really impact first, and that's the message we get from the company as well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A more technical question about lighting. You mentioned lighting, and someone would like to know what's the source of the light. Is it solar or another type?
Both.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
we have access to any kind of light. Signify one thing it's very good at is lighting, right? Innovation and manufacturing, provision of light. So we have mainly in our projects usage of solar lights, just because it is the most practical solution for off-grid communities. If there's no electricity to access, of course, then you need solar. And other than that, we also work increasingly. We see a lot of demand for it. It's on the energy efficiency side.
yeah.
So by switching from the conventional lighting to LED, it also saves a lot of money for schools, for hospitals.
Yeah.
Then there's a very critical funding for them to pivot for other essential services. So we recently just got feedback from Kenya, where we collaborated with the Ministry of Energy and UNEP Environmental Program. And did the lighting retrofitting for 100 public schools. And those are really schools that suffering from electricity energy bills. Then increased significantly since the Ukraine war for them. And it was really amazing. By simply switching to LED, that most of the schools reported saving on a monthly basis, $100 to $200, depending on the size of the school. That's massive for them.
Yeah.
Schoolmasters were very happy to say, well, now I use this money to feed my children, to set up a garden for the schools to grow vegetables and to raise chicken. So that's the immediate impacts you can see.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Other than that, also looking at innovation opportunities. yeah, to also leverage on Signify's capacity on that. Mosquito lighting, no brainer, right? Malaria, and a lot of topics that we are also, yeah, in this sector talking about. Yeah, and my role is to bring them to the attention of Signify as well, to see whether we can do something together to make a meaningful impact.
Yeah, yeah, great. And then last question from the audience for now has to do with you mentioning the importance of diversification of funding. That's something I think most organizations learned this year, especially and some earlier. The importance of not relying too much on one source.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for us on because it's a very tough environment now, a lot of competition, less funding perhaps, but any ideas on donor diversification that you've learned that we can learn from you?
I think it's important to make connections, right, and show up, and that's on my to-do list as well, right? To have, for example, a connection with RVO, FMO, yeah, those key decision makers, at least to show up and start, yeah, massaging into this is what we do, and then yeah, really happy to bring partnerships along in that, because yeah, even though the funding is reduced, there's still funding, and we really need to acknowledge that, right? And then also to look at on the projects, how can we really leverage on the communities themselves? Yeah, not to over rely on aid. That's a wake up call for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Funding reduction, this is not the first time and definitely won't be the last time. So all the interventions should, yeah, think of the exit plan.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll say usually, yeah, my success at the foundation is when we are not needed in 20 years and not keep demonstrating our relevance, right? We can't be more relevant in 20 years, then we're not doing a good job.
Yeah. Maybe also a lesson that the Signify Foundation took from the corporate sector, where they constantly think about an exit strategy, and yeah, that's something that implementers should also think about. It's yeah. I don't know, but thank you so much for this, and I think that brings us to the end of the list. So I hand it over to Kenneth again.
Thank you, Han. So maybe just to summarize, your shift from, purely or primarily providing grants to partnerships really is an encompassing shift, meaning it's not just co-creating a project, looking at what makes sense, and what partners bring to the table and how they can help strengthen each other. But also on the funding side, I think in the answer in the last question, you also see yourself as a partner to unlocking potential other funding sources, and you don't leave that to the partners to say, why don't you go out and fundraise and let me know when you have. So also on that level, you consider yourself an equal partner.
Right, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much, Yue. I think this was really insightful, and I think also for our audience to have some insights also in how the corporate thinking that shapes your work. I would really like to thank you for your time and sharing with us your insights.
There's one more question coming in: how people can actually reach out to you
Yes.
or the foundation? Yeah.
Yeah. Kenneth, you will share my contacts? Right?
Yes, we will share. So after this webinar, apart from the Q&A, the first part of the webinar is recorded, and we will also share the slides in which there is contact details for the Signify Foundation and also how to get in touch with you.
Yes, super, and really looking forward to keeping on the discussion with many of you. Yeah, the start.
Yeah. There's another last question. Can we get the website? That will also be in the materials that we will share with everyone who's signed up for the webinar. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Kenneth and Han, for having me today. Really a
You too,
pleasure.
Yue. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Please stay tuned, follow our website also, and follow HVFC on LinkedIn, where we regularly announce new webinars. We will be hosting a webinar next month, in which we again hope to share some insights from a key funder from the foundation side. So stay tuned and hope to see you all again soon.
Great. Have a good day. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.